Hello and welcome back to Reykjavík Newscast. My name is Josie Anne Gaitens. I'm a journalist with the Reykjavík Grapevine. It's a delightfully warm Icelandic summer's day, and we're here in an area called Krýsuvík, which is we're actually not far from the Volcano. If you've been following our newscast for a while, I'm sure you know about the Volcano. But we're here to talk to you about we're here to give you a volcano update in general and talk about some other geological activity that's been going on, if this sign is any hint about that. We've got lots to tell you about, and I want to get out of this cold wind, so let's get on with the show. We're here at Krýsuvík víti, Krýsuvík's Lighthouse. It took us a lot longer to get here than we anticipated. It's now raining. Art wanted me to show you that I matched the lighthouse in his jacket, because I matched the sign in the last segment. Not really sure what the point is, but the point is, essentially, that we are here to show you these cracks that have appeared in this area. So if you come over here, oh god, that really is the rain on. You can see these big cracks all along the side of the cliff here. And essentially these are cracks that formed during earthquake swarms in the last couple of years. So in 2020 and 2021. And eventually, these cracks will push possibly the lighthouse into the sea. So yeah, they're caused by these earthquake swarms in 2020 and 2021, which obviously as well were connected to the volcano that went off very near here. And now they've caused these cracks. So there's a lot of signage around now warning people to be careful. They don't sort of posit any immediate danger, but obviously you don't want to walk on them. And although you can see certain ones on the surface, there are longer ones running underneath that eventually might cause the lighthouse itself to fall into the sea. So the longest fissure is 50 metres on the surface, but longer underneath. And basically the advice at the moment is to be careful. Obviously, if you're coming to this area, just in general, there's a lot of cliffs. But to avoid the area if there are earthquake swarms. It's a very cool area. I've not been to this part specifically. We're on the Reykjanes Peninsula, which we spent a long time in. Visiting the volcano and doing various trips around about. But this area is not one that I've been to before. It's quite quiet. You definitely need a good car to come down here. But we wanted to give you an update in general, not just about this activity, but about volcanic activity that's happening at the moment, or potential volcanic activity that could be happening in Iceland. And the big one to talk about there is Askja. Askja is a huge volcano. If you watched our coverage of the small volcano on the Reykjanes Peninsula, Fagradalsfjall, or it's got a few different names, but that was we sometimes refer to that as like a tourist volcano. It was really small, it was very accessible, it was in quite a safe location, but of course Iceland has some big boy volcanoes that if they were to go off could potentially cause some serious damage. So Askja has been sort of making itself known in the last while. The land around Askja has been rising steadily over the last year, and is now at a 35 centimetre height increase. And Magnus Tumi Guðmundsson, who is the professor of geophysics in Iceland, but is also just kind of like this authority on volcanic activity. If you see him on the news, you generally know what we're going to be talking about. He has been He has basically said that Askja is awakening from the sleep it has been in for most of the last 50 to 60 years. And that's obviously quite exciting. This rain is less so. The rising is caused by an increase in pressure at the base of the volcano, which scientists essentially believe is because there's magma accumulation there. The interesting part of this is that there's very little seismic activity. And we're not quite sure what that means. It could mean that nothing's going to happen for a while, or it could mean that it will eventually erupt, but that it's more likely to be a fissure volcano as opposed to a sort of explosive one. You can see, just while we're here as well, let's finish off that last bit, you can see the lighthouse here, Krýsuvík víti, and these cliffs underneath, which eventually this rock has basically been sheared through by these tremors connected to the volcano, and you can actually see one large crack running up here, and I think this is the main one that they're talking about. So this whole cliff face is essentially on borrowed time, and at some point is going to go crashing into the sea, hopefully after all of the birds that are nesting here have fledged and migrated for the winter. It could be weeks, months, years, hard to tell, but very cool to come and see it before it actually does fall. But to go back to Askja, so like I said, this most likely scenario here is a fissure volcano. But in terms of what the impact of this will be, it's because of where Askja is situated, it's unlikely to be particularly dangerous to human life in terms of it being close to any major towns. It's in the middle of the highlands, kind of to the closer to the areas of the north and east. And unlike Eyjafjallajökull, which erupted in 2011, I think 2010, 2011. I think it was 2011, which is famous for having caused this big ash cloud. Ash. Very careful how you say that word around these parts. Askja is not under a glacier, so it does have a lake in the centre of the crater, but it's not clear whether or not. I'm certainly not sure whether it would be causing the same kind of gas or ash eruption that we saw with Eyjafjallajökull, especially if it was a fissure eruption, which, if it was kind of on bare ground and not under ice, I believe would be much less likely to be causing these big cloud eruptions. Art wants me to go and walk through some sheep. We can definitely do that. Anyway, so that's the latest kind of news around volcanic activity in Iceland. It's always important to keep your eye on these things. It was very interesting as well. But I wanted to bring you another brief update, and that's to do with something we spoke about in the last newscast, and that's this plane bomb scare, which is really interesting to have happened. Hi, sheep. You kind of don't think about things like this happening in Iceland, although obviously it was a German plane. And essentially the conclusion is no conclusion, in that here you are. All of the passengers have now been allowed to leave. They have finished doing their kind of first stage of the investigation, and without identifying the person who caused this bomb threat. So most of the passengers were all taken on a new plane. 4 of them opted to take different flights, but that means that it's most likely that the person who wrote this bomb threat on the mirror. So you remember this was a plane. It came from Germany. It was flying over Greenland, and someone discovered that a bomb threat had been written on the mirror in one of the plane's bathrooms, and as far as we believe, this is the word bomb or explode. We don't have a confirmation of which word it is. But whoever did this was probably on the plane with the other passengers flying to the original destination, which I think was Chicago. The investigation is ongoing. They're now analysing extensive forensic data that they collected from the passengers' luggage. But so far at this stage, there's no indication that there was any kind of explosive device actually on the plane. So it might remain an unsolved mystery. Should not get in between this sheep and her lamb. Hi. Oh, pleasant. And then unfortunately the last piece of news that we have to talk about today is to report on something quite sad. And that is that a man, a tourist, died last Sunday whilst trying to rescue his son from a river in the south of Iceland. This area, I'm really bad at pronouncing, but I think it's Brúará, maybe. It's near the Golden Circle, basically, which is a very popular tourist area. That's where Gullfoss and other major, it's like kind of the big like waterfall area. If you see photographs of Cinderfoss or things like this is in the Golden Circle area. But this area in particular, it was quite close to Gullfoss, but it's kind of a less popular part of the Golden Circle area, so it's quite quiet, and it's near a waterfall, and there's quite steep cliffs. And the man had been trying to save his son from the river, and had ultimately ended up falling between 400 and 500 metres down to the river, which is incredibly cold and has a very strong current. And by the time the rescue services got there, search and rescue got there, and he was pulled from the water, he was already dead. It was incredibly tragic. Luckily his son was fine, but it doesn't sort of take away from the tragedy that's taken place. This obviously comes within the context of, we've been talking a fair bit about risk to life and tourism in Iceland. It was touched upon in our last feature. And I know it's kind of ironic when I'm walking along the side of a cliff here, but please trust us, we were being very careful. Actually, there has been a new map created that has recently been released. You can find links to it and information about it in our news stories on our website, grapevine.is. And this map shows the kind of most dangerous areas of Iceland. Dangerous in the sense that where most tourist or most deaths take place. And obviously these areas may have particular dangerous elements to them, but it's also a case of just there being high concentrations of numbers of visitors in this area. But the great thing about Iceland is that if you treat nature with respect, you dress for the weather, you look at the weather forecast, this is what you can be rewarded with, is sites like this. And you just need to remember that this is a wild, natural landscape with no handrails. We had to walk here for about half an hour, so you need to respect. But that's it for our 201st newscast. Slightly chaotic, rain, sheep, all the usual. You won't be seeing us next week because we have our print week. We'll be printing the next issue of our paper, so please look out for that and all the articles that will be going online. And we will be running a competition as part of the celebrating that we have reached 200 episodes. And you can look out for information about that on our social media pages and in our newsletter. So make sure you're subscribed to that. Links are in the description. And yeah, we'll see you next month. Let's have a look for the waterfall. Okay.